Welcome back to Open Book. I'm State Auditor Allison Ball, and we are here to talk about the recent release of the Jefferson County Public School examination. It's a real big deal around here, and we're excited to have Representative Jason Nemes in the office. And he's one of the reasons why we began being interested in this examination. So I'm excited to have him here. And if you would kind of give us a background, you are from Louisville.
Yes.
You were boots on the ground from the very beginning about why this
Right.
was important. I know you brought it to my attention when I was even on the campaign trail. So if you would tell us a little bit about why this was important to do.
Yeah, so JCPS is big. We have 93,000 students. We have 165 schools, and it's a big deal. I'm a lifetime JCPS guy. I went K through 12 at JCPS. So did my wife, who teaches in JCPS. My 3 sons are in JCPS. I represent the area, obviously, and my wife teaches at a public middle school in JCPS. It's very important to me. But for a while now, JCPS has not been performing. So I wanted to make sure that we got your office involved because we know how high quality your work was when you were treasurer. So we needed to get the auditor to come in. It had been done 12 years ago or so by one of your predecessors.
Right.
We need to kind of have a follow-up, a financial audit. How are we doing? An academic performance audit. We knew we weren't doing well enough. Why? And what can we do better? And also a management audit. We had just recently been through, you may remember the busing fiasco where we had to shut school down for almost 2 weeks because we couldn't get buses to houses and schools on time. So it was just, it felt like everything was going wrong. And we needed a short-term answer, but we needed a more long-term answer. And so that's why we wanted to ask you to come in and do a deep dive. It's taken a long time appropriately, but I'm very happy with the dive that you've done.
Thank you very much. One of the things that I know that was on your radar from the very beginning, and you brought it to my attention when I was in the campaign trail, and it ended up being a big news headline, was that there were concerns about the finances at JCPS. Right. And before we even began this examination, I met with you all, and I made the case that it would be really helpful to JCPS if you all would appropriate funds for this examination. And you did do that. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of weigh in a little bit on you all appropriated the funds and why that was important.
Well, so the legislature, obviously we legislate for all 120 counties, and all of the issues in various counties are important. In Jefferson County, this is the most important thing for us. And so I went to my colleagues, and Senator Julie Rocky Adams went to her colleagues, and we got the money in the budget to make sure that you had what you needed to do the work. And I think it's allowed you to get the right contractors and also with your staff and do all the work that you needed to do. And I think it's yielded this great result. Hopefully what happens is our community will get excited about it. Our new school board, which we're going to have a whole new school board, will look at this audit and they'll use it as a guidebook, I think. So it was important for us to get it done, and we had to make sure you had the resources to do it.
Well, I think this was a really beautiful solution to fix a problem at JCPS because we knew there was a financial problem. And I know that anybody wants to take the time to read and do a deep dive on it, you'll see the progression of financial problems.
Let's start with that.
Yeah, way back in 2022, we were reviewing what the board knew and the decisions the board made. It was apparent on its face that the schools district was spending more money than it was taking in. So they were in the hole for several years, and they continue to be in the hole. And then as a steroid in the situation, they got $500 million during COVID. The financial problems that existed for a long time, $500 million caused them to spend a lot of money fast without really calculating, do we need to spend this money? Do we need to invest in this? Contracts ballooned, major investment on Chromebooks, all these things happened, and then they found themselves spending more money than they were taking in, and that's where we're at now.
And that's one of the frustrating things for our people is we know that around 2020 they had the 9% tax. They'd given the maximum tax every time they had the $500 million of federal dollars, ESSER dollars, federal dollars.
Yes.
And so they're flush with cash.
Yes.
And so when people heard we're $188 million in the red, they were thinking, whoa, how did this happen?
Yeah.
You're flush with cash, your budget has increased, so where's that money went?
So was that the reaction of people in Louisville when they were watching that?
It was.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, that's the reality of the situation is that the money went out for a variety of ways. They had contracts that ballooned out of control. You had a massive investment on Chromebooks, which incidentally is a problem now because those Chromebooks are aging out and there isn't money to reinvest in them. But that actually might end up being a good thing because we found problems in the usage of Chromebooks to begin with. But we also found that in the last 20 years, there's been a significant amount of increase in money per student at JCPS. 62% increase per student in funds to JCPS. That actually, unfortunately, only amounted to about a 12% increase for teachers, and so that's its own issue. We did find that there's a discrepancy for the amount of money that teachers are getting at JCPS compared to national averages. So that's an issue for discussion.
That 62% increase per student, is that's from the last 20 years, is that take into account inflation?
It's a great question. So that's adjusted for inflation. So
Okay.
those are those dollars, if we really get those dollars today, so 2002 numbers, looking at them today, it's adjusted for those current numbers. So we can see it's a real 62% increase. And your question is, where does that money go?
That's a healthy increase.
It's absolutely a healthy increase. It's actually a somewhat staggering increase when you look at the way things have been spent across the country. But one thing that we noticed, and I think this is a worrying stat that we found when we were looking at this, is that we did an example comparison with peer districts.
Okay.
So we looked at Baltimore, for example, San Diego. We looked at the St. Petersburg area, Florida, different areas around the country that are very similar school districts, and we found a very top-heavy allocation of monies to administration. So these are monies that are not going to teachers, not even really going to students. These are very top-heavy on the administrator side. And actually, in the examination itself, I have a graph, so I recommend to anybody to go ahead and look at the actual graph. But the comparison of teacher to administrator ratio in Jefferson County, it was the lowest of the peers that we reviewed. So it really did hit home that we are very top-heavy on the administrative side. I think it's probably time for a revisit on how we spend our dollars and make sure money's going the most effective way. We also saw a lot of higher salaries when it came to principals and assistant principals as compared to the peer districts that we reviewed, and as compared to the national average. And so those are, I think, significant things to think about.
You know, I referenced one of your predecessors earlier who did the audit 12 years ago, and one of his findings was that it was a bloated central office. And so while we've got 62% more per student, it sounds like what we're talking about, the numbers show that money didn't go to the classroom, which is where we want it to go.
Right, and it's really unfortunate because that's a finding from 12 years ago. And I do think they made some improvements for a period of time. At least I've been told anecdotally there were some improvements, but it balloons right back.
Right.
And I think those $500 million of COVID funds and then sort of an attitude of just spending money really contributed to that.
Okay, Auditor Ball, we've talked about the finances. Now let's talk about another thing that I think a lot of our citizens are really interested in, and that's academic performance.
Yes.
So what did the examination show?
Yes, so the numbers we uncovered as we did this examination on proficiency scores were really troubling. We saw a significant and sustained decrease, sharper decrease than any of the peer districts that we looked at since COVID on proficiency levels when it comes to reading, when it comes to math at the elementary level, at the middle school level. Those are the two times that you test. We also saw some really troubling numbers when it came to African American students in particular. We found that they were scoring in the third grade reading 27% below the Kentucky average, and then 14% below the JCPS average. So those are deeply troubling numbers, particularly when you figure out that African American students make up 35% of the students at JCPS. So that particular demographic is the plurality, and we are really doing a disservice to those students. We absolutely need to raise their proficiency levels and make sure that they are getting the education that they deserve. So those were really, really troubling. When we looked at the schools themselves, we saw that 2/3 of JCPS schools are listed as red or orange under the KDE designation, and those are not the colors that you want to earn.
Right.
68% of elementary schools were red or orange, and 62% of middle school and high school were red or orange. So these are definitely concerning numbers, and we need to really focus on that. And we also found out that this stems from the top. It just stems from the decision makers.
How so?
Because we reviewed what is your strategic plan to address these issues, and we found that there is no clear strategic plan that's measurable with concrete goals to address these issues, and there hasn't been one since 2020. That was when the last strategic plan that was very clear was completed. And if you don't have a plan to address these, they're not going to improve.
Right.
They're just not going to. So our
Every
recommendation,
program you talk about, every meeting, there ought to be, how is this going to help kids? How is this going to get to the classroom?
absolutely. So the finances are making the headlines because that's a
Right.
serious problem, and that needs to get addressed. And there's a blueprint for how to fix that.
Right.
But truly, even more concerning and troublesome and long-term impact is we're not preparing these kids the way that we should. So we lay out a blueprint for how to fix that, but there needs to be a very clear commitment to student outcomes not just generic, we want to make sure everyone gets better, but we need to have a plan.
You've got the money. Let's get it
Yes,
done.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. So I am really hopeful. The two big issues that I think people can take away from this examination are finances and the student outcomes, and they can be improved upon. They can be fixed. We have given a blueprint. There's new leadership. There's people like you who have led the way so much to make sure that these concerns are being addressed. I'm really hopeful.
You know, with our new superintendent, one of the things that I would always complain about was JCPS would come to Frankfurt and they would talk about a lot of things, but they would never mention academic performance.
Mhm.
And with this new superintendent, we'll see if he can get it done.
Mhm.
But what he always talks about is increase in the reading performance. So I'm hopeful, and I hope they take this audit and move with it. How have they responded when you've talked to them?
So, great question. We actually have gotten a really positive response. They recognize
good.
that they are, some of them are the new kids in town, and they have an opportunity to make the changes that need to be made. And they have said are reviewing what we recommended, and they want to implement things to fix these problems. So I'm really encouraged. They want to make the changes that need to be made.
Good.
Thank you very much for watching Open Book. We are very proud of the work that happened in this examination for JCPS. I believe it's going to be a tremendous blueprint to fix problems and get the school on the right footing for the future and make a dramatic impact for student outcomes. Representative, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your commitment to making sure that this was done, and I'm excited about the future.
Thank you, Auditor Ball. You know, I'm really excited as well. We're going to have new leadership. We have a new superintendent. It's exciting times, and we have to do better. We have 93,000 reasons why we cannot fail. So thank you for what you've done.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. Tune in next time when we discuss our next big examination. There's more to come.